best podcast, the Idlecast.
In the great hall of the Justice League, there are assembled the world's greatest heroes, created from the cosmic legends of the universe.
Scott McDermott, Harrison Perkins,
And
Scott Clark.
their mission to fight injustice, to right that which is wrong, and to serve all mankind.
And now, Scott Clark.
Well, here we are. It's another Idlecast Super Friends for February 8th, 2025. Good morning, boys. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
What's happening?
It's super cold in Michigan.
It's a Super Friends Super Cold.
Indeed.
Yeah, this is the icebox edition for 2/3 of this endeavor.
Is there, there's some evil, not superhero, but some evil character in one of the, it seems like one of the DC comics that,
Mr. Freeze.
Mr. Freeze.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
Arnold.
you. Well, yeah, I think of Mr. Freeze from the comic books, but yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger played Mr. Freeze. He did a pretty good job. Is that the Batman with Danny DeVito?
I don't
No,
think so. I
that's
think
the
that was
Batman with George Clooney,
Oh.
and it's the one that killed the franchise.
No, the franchise is still going.
Well, they had to restart it.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was a little campy, though.
A little enough that everyone hated it so much that they couldn't go on. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's your favorite Batman?
Christian Bale.
That's probably a good, all things, you know, the thing about George Clooney is he looks like Batman should look.
Yeah, that's right.
But there was the
Looks can be deceiving.
execution issue.
Why didn't it work?
I mean, I think the script was corny, the effects were corny. Like, nobody wanted Adam West style
2.0,
again
yeah.
for millions of dollars production movie. So I just don't think it had. Michael Keaton did a good job. I just always thought he didn't really have the jawline for Batman. But, you know, that's good.
So who is it? Who's your Batman?
I mean, probably Christian Bale did the best overall job, all things considered.
Interesting.
I saw Christian Bale
In real life?
at Disneyland.
Huh?
In real life.
Where was this?
Yeah, at Disneyland. I wanted to go talk to him and tell him he was my favorite Batman, but my wife said, don't do that. He's with his family. I was surprised. I didn't think it was him because he was about my height. Which
Oh,
means
interesting.
he wasn't tall. And in Batman, he seemed really tall. So,
Well,
but it was indeed Christian Bale.
Hollywood lies.
It's true.
Have we met other celebrities?
Just ever?
Yeah, just, I mean, yeah, that's a, have we met famous people?
Oh, I met one that Scott McDermott will appreciate. Don Newcomb.
Pitcher for the Dodgers.
Yes. Pitcher for the Dodgers. The Dodgers.
The Dodgers.
The Dodgers. Los Angeles Dodgers. World Series champion Dodgers. Who else? I know I've met other famous people. Mike Horton. in our circles, whenever we used to go, when I would go with him to AAR, ETS, American Academy of Religion. Man, if you want to do people watching, go to AAR, the American Academy of Religion. That is a people watching experience. That is something I will tell you. And I ended up being his body man, as they say in the security business.
I think that the guys who have the biggest footprint in our circles almost tend to be the most humble too.
Oh, yeah.
When I met Mike Horton for the first time, it was at Westminster.
Yeah.
And I came up to, I introduced myself and he said, I'm Mike Horton. And I was, yeah, man, that's why I'm here. I know that. And the same, when I met Sinclair Ferguson for the first time, he comes, I'm Sinclair Ferguson. Yes.
Yeah, we're aware
Everybody
of
in this room knows that.
Exactly. We are well aware that you are Sinclair Ferguson. And he is wonderful. Listener, I want you to know that these are, what you see with these men is what you get. They're, it's the real deal. Kind, gracious, self-effacing, humble. I mean, it's it's a wonderful testimony to the grace of God. I know they would both say that they are what they are by the grace of God. And but Sinclair is wonderful. I haven't spent a ton of time, but he was here for Dundalk lectures. I think it was last year, and we had a wonderful time. It was just so much fun, and I got to spend time with him. That's probably the most time I've spent with him, and I just thoroughly enjoyed talking with him. And he's got a great sense of humor. So, the going with Horton at AAR, every 5 steps, we were surrounded by people. He knows everybody. So that's the fun thing about, Senator Ben Sass is an old friend. He's famous.
I rode the tube with Ian McKellen once.
Oh, wow.
I was too afraid to introduce myself to him, but I took a picture over my shoulder to prove that there he is with me.
Oh, nice.
Is that Gandalf?
Yep. And Magneto.
Okay.
To tie into the superhero.
Yeah, very good, Magneto.
Theme.
Good pull. Well done.
Every now and then I get one across the line.
When I was laid up, I watched all of those.
Some of them are good.
Yeah, some of them are good. So who's the most famous person you've met? Scott Mack?
As far as San Diego legends, I met Tony Gwynn, Junior Seau.
Oh.
I met Jerry Coleman.
So you've met a bunch
Bruce
of
Bochy.
a bunch of Padres luminaries.
Yeah, exactly. As far as Detroit legends, I met Al Kaline. I actually got to play catch with Al Kaline.
Oh, that's outstanding.
In a Tigers uniform. It was great.
That is outstanding. Al Kaline. How did that happen?
Long story. We don't have time for it. But let's just say when I was younger, I spent a lot of time with Detroit Tigers, and Al Kaline was a legend.
Oh, yeah.
And he came out and wanted to play catch, so I said, yeah.
Yes,
Played
sir.
catch with Al Kaline. I've got a grass-stained baseball signed by him from that game of catch.
That's great. That's the best kind of celebrity encounter. That's outstanding.
Ernie Harwell, if you know who that is. He's the Vin Scully of Detroit.
Oh, Ernie Harwell. Yes. Yeah. No. Oh, yeah. No. I know Ernie Harwell. Yeah. He's a great announcer. Did you ever meet Red Barber?
He was. I did not.
Okay. I just wondered if we could fill out your roster of famous baseball announcers.
Well, I did have a barber at one time. So
Was his name Red?
no.
Heidelcast.
The Heidelcast.
If the Heidelcast helps you, won't you help us keep it going? Please make the coffer clink by clicking on the PayPal link or by sending a check to Heidelberg Reformation Association, 1637 East Valley Parkway, number 391, Escondido, California, 92027.
The Heidelcast.
All right, boys. So, what's happening in your world? What are you working on these days? What are you reading?
So about a week and a half ago, I taught a week-long intensive class at Puritan Seminary over in Grand Rapids on James Ussher, but just trying to get my head back around all the things to consider for that. I've been trying to catch up, I guess, on technically what's supposed to be my field of expertise, namely, Puritanism is the blanket term, but I don't know that that's the most helpful category. So I've got a stack of historical theology books. So Pierrick Hildebrand, which is the Zurich origins of Reformed covenant theology.
Is there a blimp named after that guy?
You're gonna have to connect. You're gonna have to connect those dots.
Yeah, if you mean the Hindenburg, the book is better than that.
Okay, different guy or
Yeah,
It's not flaming.
I think so. This is French. I think he's French.
I have that book on my shelf right behind my head. So, are you reading it now? Or you been reading it?
I am.
And what do you
Yeah.
think of it?
I do like it. It seems like he's maybe arguing with the state of things a decade and a half ago,
Yeah.
rather than right now.
Maybe he did it as a PhD and it took a while.
Could be, but it is a more recent. This book just came out. Yeah, so I like the source work. He's in the right sources. He's done some good archival stuff. But I think my reservation right now, and I am supposed to review this, is that he treats the documents sometimes as abstract documents. The text makes its point, and he's not necessarily grabbing hold of the things that were going on in Zurich that would motivate Zwingli and Butzer to write these documents or preach these sermons about covenant in this or that way. And so he's doing some good chronological mapping of how he's trying to argue a particular relationship that Zwingli, his covenant theology was received and developed by Butzer rather than the other way around, or Bullinger, which is the reverse of what he's saying is the standard view. And the chronology maps out, but I just wonder about things going on in the background. What were issues that were there besides just the text as texts? So that's the one that I'm reading. I'm also reading a couple of books about Reformed conformist identity. So the established churchmen who didn't kick back against canon law. So a couple of books edited or written by Jake Griesel, Anthony Milton's England's Second Reformation, which is supposed to be an amazing definitive work. That's on my list to get to next.
Okay, that's impressive. What are you doing, Scott? Are you reading anything, Scott? Commentary?
Yes, I'm reading a book by a man, first name Saint, last name Augustine.
Oh, very good.
The City of God.
Oh.
And just last week, happened to stumble upon in book 16 this gem. For the first covenant, which was made with the first man, is just this: in the day ye eat thereof, ye shall surely die. It's almost like he believed in a covenant in the garden.
Yeah, almost.
A covenant of works.
Yeah. Of course, he doesn't call it that, but you're pretty much everything you want as a covenant of works that you'd be looking for is there in book 16. It's of the City of God by St. Augustine.
Chapter 27.
Yeah, 1627. Which edition are you reading?
Well, we started with the Penguin Classics edition.
Okay.
And about halfway through, I had to switch to Marcus Dodd's.
Oh, interesting. And why was that?
Clarity.
Oh, okay.
I like the footnotes in the Penguin, but I like the clarity of Dodd's translation.
Okay. Oh, very good. I'm always happy if people are reading Augustine. Oh, that's right. That's fantastic. Yeah, you have a reading group that you do, and you have good attendance to this reading group too, right?
Yeah, we do. 10 to 15 people show up every Thursday for Theology Thursday, and that's what we're reading. That's
great. That's great. I like that very much. I have been reading. I've been on the road, so I haven't had a chance to do a lot of reading lately. And then before that, I was prepping. So I mean, I'm always reading something, reading stuff for the trip, getting ready to go do the thing. But so I was reading Volker Leppin, and I can't find the title, and I can't find the book. So I think I might have stuck it in the Jeep to go back to the office at work, because I'm got stacks and stacks of books here, running out of space, and I can't remember the title of it, but it was very stimulating. I don't think I agree with him about much, but I did learn some things. There's a debate about what year Luther went to Rome. The traditional story is he went in 1510, but Leppin says that if Luther went in 1510, then it would have been as a representative of a party within the order, the Augustinian Friars order, that was unhappy with Staupitz. And that seems unlikely, since he was deeply indebted to Staupitz and very loyal to him. And therefore, it's more likely he went in 1511 to Rome in order to defend Staupitz. So I thought that was interesting. And otherwise, I don't. And so it's stimulating. It's interesting. It's a very intelligent book, but I don't know that I agree with much of it. And I've also been dipping into Amy Montravati's book, published by 1517. It's a work of historical fiction, I think. It's a novel, Broken Bonds, a novel of the Reformation, book 1 of 2. And this is, I'm reading this and getting ready to do a series on the Heidel blog on Bondage of the Will. 1525 is the 500th anniversary of the bound will de servo arbitrio, on the bound will, or on the bondage of the will. So rereading Erasmus' objections to Luther, and then Luther's response. We'll be going and make a series of essays on that for the HB, I think, in honor of the anniversary.
How did your conference in Florida go?
It was good. The flights were relatively uneventful. The conference itself is great, and everybody was wonderful. Stayed with some people, which I don't always do, because that doesn't always go well. Staying with people, people they have lots of questions, and I end up answering questions late into the night when I should be in bed. But it was great. My hosts were wonderful, Wayne and Colleen. They were marvelous, and the conference went well. It was well attended. So this is to introduce people and to talk about the solas. And this was put on by the Wittenberg Center for Reformation Studies. I think that's right. This is an organization that is run by Ashley Null. Published a lot on Anglicanism, a well-regarded book on Cranmer, which is also on my list of things to read. And it's run by Dr. Andreas Stegman, and he's in Berlin. So is Ashley. He says he lives on a plane, but he does his laundry in Berlin, is what he says. So it was great. And Mike was there. And
yeah, I saw the podcast that you did with Mike with Keith Foskey.
Yeah.
He's nice, or seems to be.
Yeah. So we had fun.
That's what the theme song says.
He's the nice Calvinist, he says. We're all nice. Most of us, anyway, on a good day. So it was fun. It was well attended, and it was a lot of fun to hear people talking about the solas, and lots of excellent talks on the sola. John Fonville and Paramount Church in Jacksonville hosted. People came from all over the place. We had people from California and I think Detroit, and so lots of places. Had some good food. I got a Culver's malt, so that's always a good trip. I can get my hands on a Culver's malt. Had some barbecue. Oh, that's nice, because those are two things I can't get easily. I can't get Culver's here. Nearest Culver's is 4 hours away in Bullhead City, Arizona, I think. And I got some barbecue, some burnt ends. You know what that is. Scott, do you know what burnt ends are?
Are they the ends which have been burnt?
Yes, they are. They are that.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, burnt ends with some barbecue sauce, so that was good. I drank 2 glasses of sweet tea, and I regretted that. That was
Do you have
mistake.
diabetes now?
Never a regret. No.
I mean, I usually, if I go to Cane's, Raising Cane's, I get like at most half sweet tea, and the rest were, just plain. But I had 2, and that was a big mistake between the caffeine and because I almost never get any caffeine. So between the sugar and the caffeine, it's like I was up for quite a while. So that was great. Had a lot of fun. Did some amazing things. Got to fly in a helicopter. Actually had my hand on the collective briefly, which was maybe ill-advised. There's the cyclic and the collective, and it anyway. So that was fun, and saw some very. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. We're right on the St. John's River. I think it's St. John's River. So and then got to see the ocean and everything. So anyway, so it was good, and I only had to run through one airport, which was actually, as it turns out, was unnecessary. Didn't actually need to do that.
It's good exercise.
Whoa. Glad you made it. Hopefully put that online and we can all benefit.
Yeah, they're gonna put that online. So, listener, as you're hearing this, it may be online yet, but I would look at the Paramount Church website, and I don't have that to hand or to memory, so you'll have to look that. But if you just search on DuckDuckGo for Paramount Church, it'll come up. All right, you feel like answering some questions?
I feel like it.
The Hylocast.
Let's open up the coffer. Reach in there and pull this out. So we're going to do this question, guys. This is from Trevor from Wilsonville, Oregon. Beautiful Wilsonville, Oregon. I looked it up to see where it is. And it's south of Portland on the 5, right? I think right next to the Willamette River. So that's a beautiful country. Anyway, so Trevor writes to ask, occasionally I come across the controversy that was caused by the 2016 revision of the English Standard Version regarding certain translation decisions, for example, Genesis 3:16. Whenever I do, a slight sense of distrust is stirred in me for the translation. I have a few questions related to the ESV in particular and Bible translations more generally. 1. How did the ESV Translation Committee come to conclude that their unusual translations were the best option? 2. Why does this seem to be a recurring issue for the ESV specifically? 3. When will we get a quality translation in modern English that consistently adheres to an, in quotation marks, essentially literal translation philosophy and is based on a critical text? Often when this happens, I consider switching to the King James Version despite its textual issues and archaic language. All right, so interesting question from Trevor from Wilsonville. Thank you for listening, Trevor, and thank you for sending in this question. So what do you think, guys? Let's go through these, try to do this, as briefly as we can, since there's a lot going on here. But Harrison, do you remember this debate? I do, but I just wondered if you were paying attention to this sort of thing, or have you dealt with this pastorally?
I remember this debate coming up. It wasn't something that really landed with me. I was in the UK when this was going on, and
That's where English comes from.
it's true.
So it wasn't discussed there, huh? Interesting.
It's the Queen's English, though, and not the standard English as we know it. So that's why it wasn't bouncing quite the same way. I just don't think it was on the radar of people in the congregation that I was serving at the time. I do remember it. I do think that there are a couple of things to say. Partly these things come down to the division of labor between Bib studies and theology. There's a lot of guys who know Greek or Hebrew on these translation committees, and they're doing some good technical work, but they don't always have the theological apparatus to get these things across. And that's one of the the second question, why does it seem to be a recurring issue for the ESV? Well, I think one of the things going on is the ESV probably had a lot of people on that committee who are Bib studies guys trying to be theologically minded. And that causes a sticky wicket sometimes if they're not grounded really deeply in traditional systematic theology and the issues that come across in these things. And then I guess a final consideration, the question is, when will we get a quality translation that's readable and essentially literal? One, I think the ESV is pretty good personally. And so I don't have any major, just strident criticisms of it. But as somebody who tries to make a translation of most of the text that I preach, I find the issue is it's not necessarily that translations are wrong. It's just, how do you convey everything? It's impossible to get across everything that could be there. You have to make decisions. And so when these things come up that it could go this direction, it could go this direction, I try to tinker with the English Bible in front of my congregation as little as possible. I want them to trust their English Bible deeply and not be skeptical and not think that they need me. to understand everything going on in Scripture. When I do sort of make comment, here's a thing going on in the Greek or Hebrew, I try to be really clear. I'm actually not most often, I'm not criticizing that they translated it this way. It's not that this is wrong, what you see there, but because you can get at the grammar and the mechanics behind it, here's something that could make it clearer, even if less readable, and could have been something they did but didn't, and it's fine that they didn't, but I'm trying to bring this nuance in. So to bring all that together, this is just kind of complicated, and it doesn't always just get across the plate smoothly and easily, and that doesn't always indicate problems, but translation committees could probably benefit by having some systematicians on there too.
So, Scott, in your pastoral ministry, starting in Alpine and now continuing in Bad Axe, Michigan, have you had to deal with this question or these questions?
Yeah, interesting, because when we preached through Genesis a few years ago, I used the older translation, and somebody asked me why my translation was different from theirs. And I said, I don't know, because it was the first I had heard of it. So we're talking about probably 2019, 2020 when they asked me that question. And I think it's important to kind of take a step back right now. And what are we really talking about? We're talking about Genesis 3:16. To the woman he said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. So that's the 2001 ESV, right? But here's something important. The ESV does something very helpful, and I think some other translations do this. There's actually a note, verse 16, where it says, your desire shall be for your husband. There's a note right there, and it says, look down to the bottom of the page, and it gives another possible translation, and I think this is really helpful. It says, or against. So it could either be for or against. And so in 16, apparently, they went with, your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. So there's the translation that we currently have in the ESV. So my question is, and this is more of just a question for all of us, why did they go with contrary? What's the theological? Because Harrison, you're saying you've got bib studies guys, you've got systematic guys. Well, clearly the systematic guys were heard in this new translation. So what is it that they were saying that said, you should change it to, your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you? What do you think?
Well, the underlying debate, as I recall it, is about feminism, really. So this is, and I don't remember exactly how it was articulated, but I remember they published a statement or something and said, we're revising Genesis 3:16b, and this is it. This is our final translation. We're not ever changing this. And the impetus behind it was to make it clear that the Eve's desire, and this is against some alleged evangelical feminists, is to rule over her husband, and he shall rule over him. Whereas some are arguing that Eve's desire was for affection, and then her husband is not reciprocating, something like that. That's the consequence of the fall. Does that sound roughly like what you remember, Harrison?
That sounds roughly like what I remember, but because it was kind of removed from any concerns that were in my congregation, I admit that I didn't dive all the way into the specifics of it, but it certainly seemed like it was something that am I allowed to say gender roles discussion? Is it sex roles discussion?
Well, I was having a conversation with Neil Shenvey about this very thing, and his argument is that the older way of speaking was to use gender and sex as synonyms. I have not seen that myself, and I haven't had time to track it down. So until I'm shown, the evidence, and they've published this argument in a book, and I haven't seen it, so I need to check it out. But my understanding and what I have been saying for some years is that sex refers to biology and gender refers to grammar. And as far as I know, that's correct. Now, I might be wrong about that, and Shenvi says that I am. So we'll have to see how that comes out. But he says that my understanding is really derived from the 1960s and 70s, which is when I was in school. So, but the people who were, my recollection and my reading, we always used to talk about the sexes. I don't remember. I've read a lot of older texts, and almost invariably I see them, older writers, sort of before the modern feminist discussions emerged. So first wave feminism in the late 19th century or mid 19th century, second wave feminism, in the middle of the 20th century, and then third wave feminism is what we're in now. But long before even first wave feminism, I see writers distinguishing males and females as two sexes, not as two genders.
So I'll land it as, I remember it being about the discussion of roles for men and women and how those hang together in the family, and the sort of what's appropriate to say, and how do we, how should we understand this now in light of how we have better insight about how these things play out? How should we retranslate the Bible accordingly?
When they made the change in 16, did they come out with some sort of majority-minority report about why they did it?
I don't think so. I don't remember seeing any such thing. But I did. So back in 2016, I sat down and thought, well, okay, what's the history of this? And I compiled a pretty substantial list of translations going all the way back to Wycliffe in the 14th century, and going all the way up to the ESV. So Wycliffe and Tyndale, which would be in the 1530s. Yeah. Scott was attracted to that one. He likes that one. And thy lusts shall pertain to thy husband, and he shall rule thee.
It's lusties.
Yeah.
And thy lusties.
The Geneva Bible, 1559, and thy desire shall be subject to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. At least one version of the King James, one edition of the King James Version from 1611, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. ESV, or the ASV, the American Standard Version, 1901. And thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. So anyway, if you go through that whole list, and you can find that at heidelblog.net, and you could just use the search function and look for a chronological comparison. That will bring that up. Or just even search Genesis 3:16, and that will come up. That's how I found it.
So if I could maybe pull a practical point that aligns with, I think that some of the assumption behind some of these questions, I'm not saying this about Trevor, but just the whole, let's get the perfect translation sorted as a thought pattern. I think that some of the assumption in that desire is the quirk, right? The quest for illegitimate religious certainty. If we just get the perfect translation, then that will remove all the questions. But God's word calls us to meditate.
Yeah.
So it's not really on it, right? Meditate on it. It's not really that if we get the perfect translation nailed, all the questions go away.
Yeah.
That's not how Scripture works. Whether you've got for or against filled in there, I don't have a criticism of what the ESV has done there, because I think you're supposed to think about this. It doesn't clarify it entirely either way. You've got to think about the significance and why and what this is, and it's calling you to think about it.
I do. I'm not happy with what they did. I'm not happy when any of the translators do this sort of thing. If a passage is ambiguous, and this one obviously is somewhat ambiguous, just leave it that way, and
keep the note in there.
I thought they did. Mine has a note.
Yeah, but they've flipped it.
No, just leave it as it was and keep the note in
Yeah,
there.
leave it as it was and leave it to those who are explaining the text to walk people through the issues rather than trying to settle a debate, a contentious debate like this, one way or the other. But I agree with you entirely that there's a little quirkiness in the assumption behind this question, and maybe that emerges when he says he's considering switching to the King James, and there are just as many difficulties with the King James. There are difficulties in every English translation, and probably in every translation that has ever been made, going back to the Septuagint. There are lots of interesting choices made by the translators of the Septuagint. There's no getting around this. And so that's why I think we're blessed to, and this is sort of my bottom line answer, we're blessed to have such a wonderful number of good translations. Right? I think the NIV is a good translation. I think the ESV is a good translation. The New American Standard is a good translation. I've used I don't know if like there are two different versions of the Christian Standard Bible. I don't quite understand how they relate to one another, but I've used one or both of those, and I've benefited from them. I remember reading it was an Englishman who did translation of the New Testament, whose name escaped me. It wasn't Barclay, somebody else. J.B. Phillips. I read J.B. Phillips' translation of the New Testament in the summer of 1979, and that helped me. I've used the Good News for Modern Man. When I was a young Christian, I used the Living Bible, and that helped me. So I'm with you.
And call a Westminster grad to be your pastor so that you know your pastor can help you with Greek and Hebrew.
Yeah, we do need our pastors to know their languages, right? I think that's really important, that they're able to do their own work and that they're not reliant on translations. Because if you can't read the original languages and you have these different translational options in front of you, how do you sort it out? People end up defaulting to a translation. Well, how do you know that one's correct? Well, you don't, because you haven't done the work and you can't read the text in the original language. Well, boys, this is helpful, and I hope this is helpful for Trevor too. So thank you.
Thanks for listening. Tune in tomorrow for more from the Heidelcast, brought to you by Heidelberg Reformation Association.org. Don't forget, when the coin in the coffer clinks, the cost of bandwidth shrinks. Copyright Heidelberg Reformation Association. All rights reserved. This is a Heidel Media production.
The best podcast, the Heidelcast.